Hello everyone, welcome to my channel, True Crime Guru. My name is Brock Scales. I'm a true crime enthusiast based out of Cincinnati, Ohio, and I wanted to start this channel because I am passionate about true crime, and I know there are a lot of people out there that share this passion. There's also a lot of cases out there, some that get a lot of coverage and some that do not. I feel it's important that every case, whether it be a missing person, a tragic murder, or even a possible wrongful conviction, be talked about. And the more that these cases are talked about, the better the chances that the victims in these cases get the closure that they deserve. With that being said, the first case I wanted to cover is actually a local case for me. This is the story of Ryan Widmer, a man who was accused of drowning his wife in their bathtub, and after 3 trials, he was eventually convicted of murdering his wife. There are a lot of components to this story, so please bear with me because I want to make sure you guys get the full picture. This story begins like a lot of people's stories begin, with a blind date. Ryan Widmer and Sarah Stewart were set up by mutual friends and instantly really hit it off. Although Sarah kind of tried to play it cool with Ryan. When he asked her out, she acted as though she needed to check her little black book to see if she would be free, but later would admit that there was nothing in that book. But like I said, the two were extremely into each other, and it wasn't long before Ryan proposed and the two bought a beautiful 2-story house in Morrow, Ohio, a suburb here in Cincinnati. Everyone described them as the so-called perfect couple. Ryan has been described by virtually everyone as someone who is extremely laid back and go with the flow. While Sarah, on the other hand, is described as very type A, like a meticulous planner, always needing everything to be perfect. So they kind of had this opposites attract thing going on, which, according to all their friends, seemed to really work for them. With Sarah being the way she was, it was no surprise to anyone that the two had a beautiful wedding when they married on April 19th, 2008. But all of this changed just a short 4 months later, on August 11th, 2008. A 911 dispatcher receives a call from Ryan Widmer stating that he found his wife unconscious in their bathtub.
911, what's the emergency?
My wife fell asleep in the bathtub and I think she's dead.
What's the address?
Yes, Morrow, Ohio.
What's going on?
She fell asleep in the bathtub. I think I was downstairs. I just came up here and she was laying face down in the bathtub.
In the water?
Yes.
How old is she?
She's 24.
She's in the bathtub?
Yes, the water's draining right now. I tried to do it. Everything I could. I tried
Okay. So you're taking her out of the water now?
Yeah. The water's completely drained, but she's just laying here unconscious. Nothing.
She's still in the bathtub?
Yes.
Okay, so you drain the water out of the tub?
Yes.
How long was she in the bathtub?
She was in here for at least 15 minutes, half hour, somewhere in there. I was downstairs watching TV. She falls asleep in the tub all the time.
Okay, and how are you related to her? Your mother or?
I'm her husband.
Husband?
Yes.
What's your name?
Ryan Widmer.
Spell your last name for me, Ryan.
Widmer.
Have you tried CPR?
Yes, as much as I could, what little bit I know.
Okay.
Somebody coming?
Yeah, they're already on the way, Ryan. There's no way you can get her out of the bathtub?
I can try, but I have to set the phone down.
Okay. It's better to get her out of the bathtub and get her on a flat surface.
Okay. I'm dropping the phone. She's on flight service.
What's that?
She's on a flight service. Come on.
Okay, go ahead and get back to CPR. You're going to try CPR. They'll be there in a little bit, okay?
Okay.
Is your doors unlocked?
No.
Okay, you need to run and unlock the doors so that way they can get in when they get
Okay.
there. And then come back.
Okay. Okay, they're unlocked now.
Okay.
We're upstairs.
You're upstairs?
Yeah.
Do you have more than one bathroom in the house, or?
No, there's two, but the upstairs is the only one with the bathtub.
Okay. Ryan, I need you to go ahead and put the phone down and try CPR for me.
Okay. Yes, I am. Come on, Ben. Come on.
Now, I'm not one that likes to hardcore dissect 911 calls because you never really know how somebody should act or what someone should say in these types of situations. But I do believe that what someone says on a 911 call can be helpful in investigations if someone is hiding something. Now, with Ryan's 911 call, I do believe that he sounds genuinely concerned. The only things I think are kind of suspicious is when the operator instructs Ryan to remove Sarah from the tub to perform CPR, it kind of sounds like he has the phone to his ear while he's doing this, which seems strange to me because it seems like it would be hard to remove a limp body from the bathtub with the phone to your ear. Now, I want to point out that nobody actually knows if he had the phone to his ear or not, but to me it seems like a great possibility. He also gives the operator a lot of unnecessary information. When he explains that he was downstairs watching TV and then he came upstairs to get ready for bed when he found Sarah, the only reason I find that suspicious is because it doesn't seem relevant to the actual emergency. And a lot of people will speculate that this is Ryan separating himself from the incident. This 911 call actually becomes extremely important later on, and there's a few key reasons as to why. One of the things is that Ryan told the operator that he found Sarah face down in the tub, and that the tub was already drained before he placed the call. He also tells the operator that she fell asleep in the tub, and that she does this often. EMS arrives to the scene only 6 minutes after the call was placed. They immediately rush to Sarah and find her flat on her back on the carpet in the master bedroom, right by the master bathroom. I do have a picture here of the scene so that you can get a better idea of what they would have come into. They notice that Sarah has discharge coming from her nose and her mouth, which is consistent with a drowning. And I also must note that the discharge coming from her nose and her mouth would likely appear if someone had already been attempting CPR. EMS performs CPR as well, and they even try to intubate Sarah, but they are unsuccessful. Investigators arrive on the scene as well. One of those investigators being Lieutenant Jeff Braley, who actually ends up taking the lead on this case. What investigators observe when they arrive on the scene strikes them as odd. They notice that Sarah's body appears to be completely dry, with the exception of her hair, which only seems to be kind of damp. They also notice that her fingers were not pruned at all, which is what you would expect if someone had been soaking in the bath. But no, they were not pruned at all, and her fingernails were actually freshly manicured as well. They also notice a lack of water. The bathroom appears to be pretty dry. The tub itself appears to be dry, except for a little bit of water around the drain. They do notice some wet magazines on the floor and a little bit of wetness in the carpet, but otherwise the bathroom is dry. They also note that the bottles on the ledge of the tub appear to be completely undisturbed as well. All of this raises some eyebrows for investigators, and understandably so. I have a picture here of what was seen in the bathroom when the investigators arrived. You can see that the tub looks pretty dry. The magazines are kind of wet, but the rest of the bathroom looks pretty normal. Another thing that they notice is that the TV is still on downstairs, but it's not set to the channel that the Bengals game was on, which is what Ryan claims to have been watching. Now, I personally don't think that this is an important detail, but a lot of investigators and people disagree. Sarah is rushed to a local hospital. EMTs performed CPR on Sarah for 45 minutes and failed several attempted intubations. Hospital staff try as well, and I believe they were successful in intubating her, but unfortunately, just a short while after arriving, Sarah is pronounced dead. Sarah's death is a complete shock to everyone who knew her. In fact, nobody, even Sarah's immediate family, thought that this was nothing but a very tragic accident. So I can imagine that it must have been a total surprise to everyone when Ryan was arrested the very next day. The toxicology report had not even come back from the autopsy yet, and yet detectives were positive that this was a homicide and that Ryan was responsible. Nobody saw this coming. Friends and family were incredibly confused because everyone thought of Ryan and Sarah as, quote unquote, the perfect couple. Sarah's parents actually stood by Ryan at this time and even postponed Sarah's funeral until Ryan was able to get out on bond and be able to attend. Having Ryan arrested meant that investigators would need to rely heavily on the results of the autopsy. The medical examiner ruled that Sarah did in fact die from drowning and that the manner of death was homicide. He noted that Sarah had internal and external bruising on the right side of her forehead, a petechial hemorrhage in her eyelid, bruising on the left side of her neck, and an abrasion in her left armpit. The toxicology report confirmed that there were no drugs or alcohol in her system. Other forensic testing would reveal that there were 2 DNA samples found underneath her fingernails, her own and an unknown female. It was never confirmed who this unknown female was, and as far as I know, it was not investigated. They did also test a carpet sample from the bathroom, and those tests would come back positive for fecal matter and blood. But personally, I don't give any weight to that, considering that the carpet was from the bathroom. Ryan's first trial took place in March of 2009. Both the prosecution and the defense had their work cut out for them, because this case was in no way a slam dunk in my opinion. But from what I've seen and read about prosecutors, they seem to think that it was. The prosecution brings forward all the suspicious aspects of the crime scene: the dry bathroom, the dry tub, the dry body. They also bring the 911 dispatcher to the stand, and they testify that Ryan seemed calm and like he was distancing himself on the call. I heavily disagree with this. I can definitely see the claim about him distancing himself, but I wouldn't describe him as calm. They also claim that Ryan was telling inconsistent stories. He told the 911 operator that he found Sarah face down in the tub, but reportedly told a nurse at the hospital that he found her face up. Did he simply just misspeak on the 911 call? Did the nurse not hear him right? Or was he hiding something? It's honestly hard to tell, but I still wouldn't consider this damning evidence. Prosecutors even allude that Sarah may not have even drowned in the tub, that it may have been in the sink or in the toilet, which would explain why only her hair was wet. But basically that means that they can't even pinpoint how Sarah died. They also refer to the autopsy and the bruising that was found on Sarah's body. The medical examiner testifies that this bruising is consistent with a struggle. But what about the 45 minutes of CPR that was performed on Sarah? I think it's highly likely that this bruising could have been sustained from the extensive life-saving measures from EMTs. They also brought forward evidence that there were finger marks going downward in the tub, and they claimed that this could have been Sarah fighting to pull herself out of the tub. They also found a forearm impression on the ledge of the tub, and they claimed that that one was Ryan's. I must note that these impressions were never verified to be Ryan's or Sarah's. They only think that the finger marks were Sarah's because they came from small fingers. Now, for the defense, they had several friends testify that Sarah had fallen asleep in the tub before. In fact, friends and family say that Sarah falls asleep a lot and in really strange places at really strange times. A friend has said that Sarah has fallen asleep at tailgating events and even at football games themselves. Ryan's mom has a family video from Christmas where there's a lot going on and a lot of noise, and then you see Sarah in the corner sleeping. The defense also brought forward an expert that testified that there are 300,000 unexplained deaths in young people each year, and that 1/3 of them can have completely normal autopsies. So the jury goes to deliberate, and I don't know exactly how long they deliberated for, but I do know that it was a longer amount of time. They even asked for the physical tub during deliberations. But they do come back with a verdict, and they convict Ryan of a lesser charge of murder as opposed to aggravated murder. He is sentenced to 15 years to life. Now, this is something I almost never see in a murder case, but there were actual protests outside of the courthouse following this conviction because so many people felt that Ryan was innocent. A group even created a website called Free Ryan Widmer, and there was a lot of public outrage from this conviction. Now, you think that this would be the end of the story, but no. A few months after the trial, a member of the jury comes forward and says there's something weighing on their conscience. They say that members of the jury were actually performing at-home experiments, testing to see how fast a body can dry after being submerged in water. Now, I totally get the curiosity here, and I feel like this would be hard for me not to do myself, but in a trial, this is definitely not allowed. The jurors are only supposed to consider the evidence brought forth in trial. So, due to juror misconduct, a judge actually declares this trial a mistrial, and Ryan gets a second chance to prove his case. Trial number 2 occurred in May of 2010. This trial included a lot of the same evidence. The prosecution really pinpointed their focus on the bathtub itself in this trial, so I guess that means they no longer think it could have happened elsewhere. And one thing I wanted to mention that I didn't mention from the first trial, in either the first trial or the second trial, did the prosecution bring forward any motive? Now, of course, they're not required to have motive, but it really helps. And I think it really would have helped them in this case because, why? Now, for the defense, they really focused on poking holes in the prosecution's case and creating reasonable doubt. They even took the jurors to the house so that they could see the bathroom in the small space that it was. I think that this was incredibly smart because, according to the prosecution, Ryan drowned Sarah and then quickly cleaned up the scene after. But there were no wet towels found anywhere in the house, not even in the washer and dryer. And there was no water or disturbance of any kind in the bathroom. I'm not even sure why they focused on this so much anyway, because if Ryan had done it, why would he clean up the water? Water is what you would expect to see if someone had drowned in the tub, and water is also what you would expect to see if there was a struggle of some kind. Why would he care enough to put the shampoo bottles back where they belonged, but not care about the wet magazines on the floor? The defense also brings up that Sarah's nails were still freshly manicured and intact. And photos of Ryan from the night of the incident prove that there were no marks on him whatsoever. So there was obviously no sign of a struggle. Someone in the investigation even testified that the bathtub itself was not confiscated in a timely manner and was left open for contamination. This would mean to me that any evidence from the bathtub could be discounted, which I think it should be anyway because the finger marks and the forearm impression literally prove nothing to me because they were never verified to be Ryan's or Sarah's. The jury goes to deliberate in the second trial, and it obviously wasn't an easy deliberation because they deliberate for 4 days. And it turns out that they actually could not come to a unanimous decision, so Ryan Widmer's second trial is yet another mistrial. I think it's important to say that in between these trials, Ryan was living with his parents, and he would spend a lot of time on the Free Ryan Widmer website, and he would give his supporters his personal information and have extensive phone conversations with them. Most of these supporters were women, and Ryan would actually receive a lot of scrutiny and backlash because it was perceived by some that he was using this platform to talk to pretty ladies. Personally, I don't see it that way. I can see how it can be perceived that way and why it might look suspicious to some, but knowing the true crime world, I know that it consists of a lot of women. So therefore, I can understand why most of his supporters would be women. Also, this man is basically alone and fighting for his life, so I can see how talking to his supporters and venting about his case would be like a form of therapy for him. However, this would come back to bite him in his third trial. In between the second and third trial, Ryan was actually offered a plea bargain for involuntary manslaughter. This carried a sentence of 1 to 5 years or probation. Ryan completely turned this down. He said that he was not going to plead guilty to something that he did not do. Trial number 3 took place in 2011. The defense was ready to take this on. They got a hung jury in the second trial, so they knew they had enough reasonable doubt, maybe even enough for an acquittal. The defense wanted to focus heavily on science in this third trial. They were ready to bring forward expert after expert to prove their case. But a judge actually limits the number of experts the defense could bring forward, which is something that I've never heard of in another case, and it kind of pisses me off, because the judge basically limited the number of witnesses the defense could have, which really feels like a Sixth Amendment violation to me, because how are you getting a fair trial if you're limited to how far you can go to prove your innocence? The defense also wanted to bring forward evidence about Lieutenant Jeff Braley, because he wasn't even working for the police department anymore due to falsifying employment records and misconduct. But the judge denies this evidence too. And there was also a man on the jury who admitted to having previous prejudices against Ryan, but he was still allowed to serve on the jury, which again also feels like a Sixth Amendment violation. The prosecution attacks this trial similarly to how they handled the first 2 trials, with a lot of the same evidence. They actually brought in an expert to testify to the rareness of falling asleep in the bathtub. Accidental drownings of this manner are incredibly rare, and that's because your body would naturally react to you being underwater. Whether that be you simply waking up because there's water on your face, or waking up because the water is starting to enter your lungs. They also kind of hint to motive as well. There is evidence found on Ryan's computer that he had been frequenting a website called Adult Friend Finder, which is basically like a chat room / hookup site. They claim that Sarah found out about this and confronted Ryan, and it led to an argument that got out of hand and Ryan killed Sarah. This kind of bothers me because there is no proof that Sarah knew about Ryan visiting this site or that this fight even took place. As far as I know, Sarah never confided in anyone about Ryan cheating or visiting hookup websites. But what nobody was prepared for in this third trial was the prosecution's star witness, and her name was Jennifer Crew. She was one of the women that Ryan would speak to over the phone. According to Jennifer, her and Ryan developed a very close relationship, and that one night Ryan broke down to her on the phone and confessed to killing Sarah. She says his exact words were, "I killed her." She goes on to say that Ryan explained that him and Sarah got into a fight, and Sarah said that she wanted a divorce. He then proceeds to say that he kicked her in the chest and then kind of blacked out, I guess, like he doesn't remember killing her. This was really bad for the defense, but they actually do a fabulous job at discrediting her. She faltered in her story during cross-examination, and she can't even remember the exact time of the call. Apparently, she claims that the call happened very late at night, but phone records prove that the call happened much earlier in the day. They also destroy her character by bringing up her criminal history, which pretty much just includes misdemeanors and miscellaneous drug charges. Apparently, she had a history of drug addiction and was taking medication to assist her in her recovery. They actually bring in another supporter of Ryan's named Melissa Walter, who actually talked to him the same day. She testifies that Ryan sounded completely normal and not panicky at all. Phone records prove that Ryan talked to this woman for over an hour prior to talking to Jennifer. The defense attacks this third trial by suggesting other reasons Sarah may have drowned that night. Sarah's boss testifies that she was complaining of a headache and a stomach ache that day, which definitely doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but apparently she complained of headaches a lot. The defense suggests that there may have been an underlying medical condition that led to Sarah's death. The prosecution and the defense rest their cases in Ryan Widmer's third trial. After much deliberation, the jury finds Ryan Widmer guilty of murder. Some jurors say later on that they did not believe Jennifer Crew's testimony and that both the prosecution and the defense made good arguments about Sarah's bruising. One juror admits that a major factor in their decision was Ryan's demeanor throughout the trial, saying that he looked disinterested and like he didn't care when pictures of Sarah were shown. Which I would totally understand if this was his first trial and most of this was foreign and fresh to him, but this was his third trial. He had been through this before, so his reactions aren't going to be as raw and authentic as some would expect. I also don't like to overly examine a defendant's behavior in the courtroom because most of the time they're instructed by their attorneys to show very little emotion. Given all the factors and components in this case, I really wish I could say definitively if I think Ryan Widmer is guilty or innocent, but I really can't. And you'll learn that I don't really like to use the word innocent because you can never really know for sure. I do think that Ryan Widmer was not found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in my mind, and I don't think that he received a fair trial. The judge limiting the number of experts the defense could bring forward and allowing that biased juror to stay on really bothers me. Ryan's attorneys are also appealing the bathtub evidence. Apparently the tub was not listed on the search warrant and was still obtained by police, so his attorneys are saying that evidence should have never been allowed. For me, it really is the lack of concrete evidence. I do think the fact that the bathroom, the tub, and Sarah were dry is extremely suspicious, and I do find it hard to believe that it's possible for a body to dry in that short amount of time. However, throughout any of the trials, neither the defense or the prosecution brought forward any scientific evidence or expert testimony to prove or disprove this. The prosecution also relied heavily on the bruising that Sarah sustained, and I think it's very possible that she sustained that bruising throughout the 45 minutes of CPR that was performed on her. Also, the fact that there was no evidence of a struggle in the bathroom or on Ryan really creates a lot of doubt in my mind. Ryan and his attorneys are pushing for Sarah's DNA to be submitted for genetic testing, and I support this. If the testing comes back saying that there was no underlying factors that could have led to Sarah's death, then that would certainly remove some doubt from my mind. And if the testing comes back saying that there is an underlying condition that could have led Sarah to drown, then that new evidence could allow Ryan to get a new trial. So either way, I think that the genetic testing would put a lot of people's minds to ease in this incredibly complicated case. They need to be careful though, because all of this talk about DNA testing made me think of another case in Ohio, a case that I might talk about one day. A man named Anthony Apanovich was convicted of killing a woman named Mary Ann Flynn on December 14, 1984. New DNA testing caused his conviction to be overturned in 2016. But a legal loophole allowed a judge to disregard the DNA evidence and put Apanovich back in prison. Under Ohio law, an offender must submit an application for DNA testing in post-conviction appeals. If the testing is requested by the state, the law could make the entire DNA evidence useless for the defense. When I think about this relating to the Ryan Widmer case, I just think that his attorneys should be careful and make sure the DNA testing is requested by them to avoid this legal loophole. Ryan Widmer is currently serving a sentence of 15 years to life in an Ohio state prison. Ryan actually ended up in a new relationship, oddly with another woman named Sarah, and even conceived a child with her. Ryan is eligible for parole in July of 2025. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do not hesitate to hit the like button and please subscribe for more exciting true crime content. My first 3 videos are available to watch right now with new videos dropping every Sunday.